2005 Ford 500. And I got to tell you, I've never felt a front end feel like it's about to fall out of a car like this one was. I did find the culprit, and I'll show you that here momentarily. Also, the car was slowly losing power and going into Limp-Home mode occasionally, whenever it kind of felt like it. And I think I've got that traced down, and we'll get to more of that here in a minute. But all in all, not a bad car. Still needs a couple more things. The front valve cover is leaking, and the motor mounts need a little attention. But all of that's relatively easy to get to. Overall, an easy car to work on. So stick with me and we'll get to more of it. And I'm gonna replace the big bearing, big bushing here, and I'm gonna replace the press-in bushing over there on the front. They're both wildly beat up. And so far, tie rod off real quick and easy. Basically falls off in your hand. And then I'm just holding the top of the ball joint, and it's coming apart really easy. 21 millimeter on the bottom. She's coming apart easy. And it'll be 2 bolts running through. One's here and one is on the inside there. The head's easy to get to on the bottom. That'll fall right out. And then this nut is that one right there. That one, the big one, is welded to the frame. So you just take the head of the bolt out from this side in here, and it'll come right out. This whole lower control will fall out, and then you can start pressing it in or removing it as needed. So she's all loose, ready to come out. These 2 big bushings, bolts, just falls out in your hand, and the whole thing just falls on the floor like that. That was easy. Now, we'll see how bad this big end was. Oh my God. I don't think it's supposed to do that. Even this end over here, you can't hear it, but I mean, this thing is, it's basically unscrewing itself. You can imagine the sound this was making anytime you put it in drive or reverse. And this is getting beat up here. So, good news is the ball joint's still good. It's a little worn, but she's locked in place. So we're gonna keep this on a budget and show you that there's a way to do this without buying a new $80 or $100 control arm. This was, I think, $30, and this is 10 bucks. So if you're willing to do the work on it, you can save yourself easily $100 in parts alone. But gosh, I've never seen one that bad. Ain't over yet. That's the outer skin. All right, we're getting there. This was easy enough to pull off almost, but about this one. But this is about to come off. here is the left side. Can't imagine that not making any sounds. The right side was just as bad. So what I'm gonna do, here's the kit I'm using. Power built, I know it's upside down. Had a couple pieces missing. I probably needed one of those at least, but we're gonna go through this and take out the pieces we need, which I think is gonna be this cup, and it's gonna fit over top of that bushing, and it feels like it might actually fit already. However, I might just trim some of this upper ridge back to make sure I have clearance. And I tell you, it doesn't feel too bad already. Anyway, that's what we're gonna do. I'm just gonna use the die grinder and cut off some of that. So all I've really done now, in about 5 minutes, I just ground back that lip from the bushing and then knocked it up and out of the way a little bit so that now this cap fits on, guaranteed to slide right in. And then I'm just going to use, like I did before, a double stack of metal across the top. Because of this angle, it's really tight. And I'm going to get the clamp on top of that sucker, and I'm just going to press the old bushing right up into that cup. And that's it. So here's going to be my setup. This is just a small little adapter out of the kit. I just wanted to go wide enough on the bottom of that bushing to not collapse the inside of it. And then she should just slide right up in. So let's go, let's see. Maybe. Yep. There she goes. That one's really in there. I would say a lot easier than the last side. All right, 1 second. Now the rest I think we're going to have to hammer out. There it is. Finally came out. She's a tight fit. She went in, but it was a tight fit. So maybe grind a little more next time off this upper lip. And then I'll clean this thing out and put the new one back in. We'll just give this a good scrub with a green pad. And there's no reason to stick this in the freezer or heat one side up. None of that's necessary. It'll all go in pretty easily here momentarily. So, new one's about to go in. Make sure we get this as square as we can with the base of this. Now this has got a little lip here and a little lip on that side that I'm going to grind these down. So that way I'm going to use this cap, which this bushing is only going to protrude this way, not even that much. So this cap over that will be more than sufficient. But right now, You can see that wobble from the factory form on those seams. So I'm going to grind these down, get this to fit flat, and then it's just going to be pressing that back in this cup till it bottoms out.
Let me use this. Hold on.
I have to. For what?
For the oil.
Not right now. Don't worry about it. And my battery died. All right, we're going in with a big gun. My battery died. Okay, we got air pressure. Continuing on. Okay, new plan. To finish that last, I don't know, maybe a millimeter to get it fully seated. I'm putting a deeper cup on, and I'm gonna crank it over by hand. Oh, effortless. There, bottomed out. And fully expect that to happen. And again, this is going back together way too easy. Get my light. Or you have my light. I'll take this one. So, those two bolts back there, the top is an 18 millimeter and the bottom is a 15. So the nuts are 18 and the bolts heads themselves underneath are 15. We'll get that bolt back in there in a second. I'll line that up. This tie rod end, too easy. We'll snug all this stuff down here momentarily. And then on the inside, where is it? There. My light's a little big to be looking in right now, but there. I'll snug that down and torque that to spec here shortly. That's the ball joint. And then this whole end will be buttoned up. It's that simple. It went in really easy. And just as a reminder, what we're going to do is load the suspension up as if the car is on the ground before I tighten that last bolt, which is up in this hole right there. That's the big bolt that runs through the bushing. So we're gonna lower the car down on the jack a little bit and get this thing in the right orientation, and then we'll tighten up that, and then wheel back on and we're done. All right, getting back to this. Again, car is still hot, so I am replacing the valve body. So the reason we're replacing the valve body, where the symptoms the car was exhibiting, where it would start slowing down, less and less throttle response, and then it basically went into what I call Limp-Home mode, to where she had very little power to even get the car off the highway. So that's why we're replacing this. Also, to get this off, it's relatively simple. There were only 4 bolts. I believe they were 8 millimeter. They come off relatively simple. A hose off of the intake for the air box, and then I just used some pinch clamps on the coolant lines, because this is, like I say in the video, a cold weather optioned car, which means it has
coolant lines that run through the throttle body, where the cars without that option have no coolant lines running to the throttle body. Yeah, makes it easier. But this one, relatively simple, straightforward. I didn't even need to bleed the system for this. It was displaying a check engine light, and the codes were throttle position sensor codes. So I bought a used one with a 30-day warranty off eBay, and so far, so good. No complaints. The car's been great.
And this car does come in 2 flavors. It's got the cold weather package, which has the hoses, and then there's a normal package for non-inclement weather, where there is no hose going into the cooling system. So we're just letting the car cool down a little bit first before we swap that out with the good one. So stepping away from the suspension for a second, we did put a used, new to us, throttle body on. Everything. I replaced this line because it was pinched closed from a shop that we got the throttle body from. I reopened the line and put a real clamp on it instead of the pinch factory stuff. So she's all sealed up. Really easy job. 4 bolts, 8 millimeters top, 2 on the bottom. This piece comes out. Don't break the plastic hose. I know they're pretty brittle, and they tend to break right at the fitting ends here and up in here. So be careful with that when you're removing it. I did take the connector of the map sensor off, connector off the side of the throttle body. And on the bottom, we got the top hose here, and then you got another one on the bottom. But when you pull this forward, you'll be able to access the other hose. This is actually the other end of that hose right there. Really simple job, nothing too complicated. I did put a new air filter in while we were doing it. And everything else in the engine bay looks pretty decent right now. So the valve cover was leaking, and I decided to do that for real quick. I say real quick, took about 45 minutes. Did run into a couple of problems, but nothing we couldn't handle. Everything ended up coming apart pretty straightforward. I'm only replacing the front part of this, the front half of the V. Well, it is a lot easier, thank God. It never works out that way, but this time it happened to work out this way. The rear isn't leaking right now, so I'm only going to replace the front. This one does have a pretty good leak on it. However, these bolts, whoever put them in last, way over tightened them. And this one was actually broken off inside. So we're gonna have to try to extract that out to get a seal on this. So let's get started. Okay, getting back to this, I didn't even need to drill that out. Since the tension was knocked off, I'm able just to pull that out. I started twisting it just with 2 screwdrivers, seeing if it was gonna allow me to turn it at all, and it did. It wiggled. I could see it wiggling in the thread. So patience, and they paid off this time. So now I'm able just to get this thing extracted pretty easily, I'm guessing. So now it turns effortlessly, and I'll be able to get my finger on it here in a second. And I know I'm going to have one of these bolts laying around that will work perfect. So this will be a free fix. There it is. There it is. No extractor necessary. So this is the valve cover that we're using. It's the Ultra Power off of Rock Auto. And I got to tell you, the fit and finish, if you want to call it that, is really kind of nice. It's very well constructed, and so far it has been a perfect fit. Everything went in beautifully on the first valve cover. I mean, every bend is in the perfect location. No concerns whatsoever. Then all of these have been replaced as well. All the original black ones were destroyed, obviously. But these, you got to be really careful slicing your fingers if you're going to stick a screwdriver in here and pry them up and over. They will give you a hard time because they're not very pliable after a lot of heat cycles. So we're going to use fresh stuff everywhere. I got some Victorines, and this, I actually took the dipstick
bolt off to allow me a little bit more access, so just enough. But the Rhinzo seal, we're going to add that here, anywhere that the case meets. So we got 4 corners, we'll add that. And it goes on really easy on the front one, kind of effortless. So let's get it done. So when I was taking apart this valve cover, I saw this lower left corner had some deformation on it, ground away some of the metal, and it ended up being cracked all the way through from the last time whoever put this thing together. So I did have some JB weld with some embedded steel into an epoxy form, and wedged that in, kind of crammed it in best I could to kind of let that set. It was supposed to set in 6 minutes, but it took a lot longer than 6 minutes, probably the better part of an hour. I added some heat gun to it, trying to expedite the process, and that just made it sticky or tacky again. So it did work pretty well from what I understand. She hasn't had any complaints with this car leaking any more oil. It didn't crack when I was torquing it down. It torqued down to spec, no problems, but it was a little bit longer than what they advertise. However, it seems to be working. Okay, so it's been more than 6 minutes, but she's still not cured right. I put a heat gun on it, trying to expedite the process. All that did is soften it up a little bit more again, so we're gonna let that sit as long as we can. And we did put all the bolts back in. I know this is the one that had, well, I relocated it. This is a new bolt we're gonna put in lieu of the one that broke off. Those are all in. As long as you're seeing some of the blue, you know that the bottom seal got through on all of them. And they are there. You just gotta look for them. But make sure you have that sorted out when you get these new hardware put in, that you can at least see the lower portion of the gasket on the bottom end. Again, this gasket so far, I'm really impressed with it. It's really nice silicone. All right, cap is back on. Gasket seems like it's in the right place. I'll use a mirror just to make sure that everything is lined up nicely. But she went together pretty nice. This is just loose enough to slide it over the bottom edge. And we're gonna go torque this thing down. It looks like it's gonna be about 10 Newton meters. Don't quote me on that, go do your own research, but I'm gonna use 10. And we're gonna start middle, work our way out. Last reminder, don't forget to put your sealant down, all 4 corners, or you're gonna have to take it off like I just did and do this all over again. All right, finishing up the video. No leaks, took her for a little drive. She's running good, no major concerns. That initial problem that we had with the throttle body has been resolved. We put probably 200 miles, 300 miles on it. The car's acting beautiful. It's been 2 weeks since we did that, 3 weeks. The front end feels good. I do have probably the roll bar bushings are bad on it, as well as the drag links, but not a big deal. They'll take care of that. This car is 1,000 times better than what it was. So this is the final wrap-up video on this one. So she's all good. I'm Derek. This is 4 in Tune.